My dear students, how are you? I hope you are okay. Today we will see use of passive voice, various uses of passive voice. We know how to change voice, and partly I have told you about passive voice when I taught you changing. Now we will see where should we use passive voice. Actually, passive voice are not frequently used in English language. About 90% or more sentences in English are used in active voice, and only 10% sentences are found in passive voice. But sometimes passive voice is necessary, and now we will see where we should use passive voice. Dear students, especially in formal language, we use passive voice. Firstly, see this sentence. The students of class 11. This is not actually the notice of our principal. I am just writing this for the sake of our learning. The students of class 11 are hereby told that they are a half-yearly examination starts from, suppose this is June, starts from 15 June 2021. Time schedule is given below, such and such. You may notice that this is just the beginning sentences of a notice the principal is writing. Our principal is giving the order, delivering the order, and now he is speaking in such a way. The students of class 11 are hereby told that their half-yearly examination starts from 15 June 2021. Time schedule is given below. The noticeable place is are hereby told. This is, you see the use of passive voice. Another place is given, is given, is given. And seeing the verbs, you easily understand this is the use of passive voice. But why is there passive voice, not active voice? The principal is known to everybody, and he feels no necessity of expressing his own identity. He does not think that he should expose his identity. Everybody knows him, and the order is coming from him. That is why he is not using his name or designation here. He will give his designation at the end of the notice, and nowhere in the notice he will be seen. Okay. The students of class 11 are hereby told that their half-yearly examination starts. Here you find an active voice, starts, half-yearly examination. This is another part of the sentence, and there is another verb starts from. This is the use of active voice. The examination starts, and examination starts. This is the use of intransitive verb. Examination begins, starts. Here intransitive verb, and here is active voice. But in a sentence, we have three verbs: are told, starts, and is given. And out of three, we have two passive voice. So when we are very formal in our expression, we use passive voice. And another thing is, we have learned how to change the voice from active voice to passive voice, and that time we knew that we usually use by, and the very subject is changed into object, and after by or after to or after any preposition we use the real subject. But real subjects are not often mentioned. In a passive voice, we usually don't need to use passive voice, passive subject. Why? Why should we want to show the object as the subject of the passive voice? Why? This is because we want to give importance on certain thing, and that very important thing is our agent or subject. Our subject is the main focus of our speech, and that becomes the agent of the action. So the person who performs the verb or performs the action is actually the agent, is actually the subject of a sentence. So if we want to focus that, we mention them as the subject. Here the students are focused, they are important here. The principal wants to highlight the students, so they are the subject, and he has not told that are hereby told by me, that is told by principal. That is quite unnecessary here. That is why it is not mentioned here. In this way, the real subjects are really eliminated. Naturally, they are eliminated. Is given below by me. So by me is eliminated here. This is excluded here. This is not mentioned here. Now we will see this in a series of points. When we do not know who the agent is, we will use passive voice, and we will not mention the real subject of the sentence when we do not know who the agent is, that is, who is working or who has worked or who has performed the action of the sentence. Notice this sentence, dear students. A water pump has been stolen from the farm. A water pump has been stolen from the pump. In this sentence, the main verb is steal. In the perfect tense, you may use has stolen, but here we see has been stolen. Why? Because of passive voice. Now, whom do you want to focus? Water pump or the thief? Actually, we want to mention that a pump has been stolen. That is important. And another thing, we don't know who stole the pump. The thief is not found, the thief is not seen. That is why it is not possible for the speaker to mention the name of the thief. But there is real object which has become here the subject, that is a water pump. If a thief steals a pump, thief is subject, pump is object, but here in the sentence, pump has become the subject. So, when the agent is not found or agent is not known, we use passive voice. A water pump has been stolen from the farm. Thereafter, notice the second sentence. I had the feeling that I was being followed. I had the feeling that I was being followed. That is past continuous tense passive voice you find here. Firstly, I had the feeling, this is past indefinite tense. Thereafter, I was being followed, this is passive voice. I felt that someone was following me, but I could not see him. Anyway, I could not see him, but I felt that someone was following me. That is why he cannot be mentioned. The follower cannot be mentioned. That is why he is not used here, he is not mentioned here. I had the feeling that I was being followed. So, these two sentences are better than these two sentences. Someone has stolen a water pump from the farm, or I had the feeling that somebody was following me. The last two sentences are not as good as the first two sentences. So, someone has stolen a water pump from the farm, and I had the feeling that somebody was following me are correct, quite correct, and they are the same. But we are using here passive voice, and these sentences, the first two sentences are better than the later two sentences. Next, when it is obvious to the listener or reader who the agent is. The opposite thing, but it is also as the sample of passive voice. The matter is just opposite. Firstly, we could not find the identity of the agent, but now the identity is found and it is obvious. And because of being so much obvious, it is not necessary to mention his or her name here. Notice this sentence. I had been ordered to repair the broken walls. I had been ordered to repair the broken walls. Suppose this is an office and the walls of the office are not in a good position, and my executive or my boss has ordered me to repair this. Now the speaker who is working here is saying, I had been ordered to repair the broken walls. In past perfect tense, you see, I had been ordered. Who gave order? This is not mentioned here because this is unnecessary. Another sentence, you see, he knows that he is being paid less than the native people. He knows that he is being paid. This is present tense, firstly in active voice, and secondly in the subordinate clause, that he is being paid less than the native people. You see, this is present continuous tense in passive voice. He is being paid less by whom? We know this, the speaker knows this, and the speaker thinks that the person whom he is spoken to must know the identity of the person. So, intentionally he does not mention the name of the agent because he is quite obvious. So, instead of using these two sentences, our executive had ordered me to repair the broken walls, and he knows that the employer is paying him less than the native people. So, which sentences are better? The first two sentences are better than the next sentences. Our executive had ordered me. Our executive has been excluded here, has been eliminated, has not been mentioned here. He knows that the employer is paying him less. So, who is paying less? The employer is paying less. So, there is no mention of the employer because everybody knows who pays. So, when it is obvious to the listener that the agent is obvious to the listener or reader, he or she is not mentioned. Come to the third point, when it is not important to know who the agent is. Sometimes we don't need to know the agent or the person by whom the action is done. See the example, do you want financial help? This is the speech of a person. The next person answers, no thanks, I am being sent 20,000 taka. The first speech, the first speaker speaks and makes a question, do you want financial help? And the person spoken to is giving answer, no thanks, I am being sent 20,000 taka. So, the offer of financial help is denied because some person is sending 20,000 taka, and the identity of the sender is not necessary, and that is why instead of using this sentence, do you want financial help? No thanks, my brother is sending me 20,000 taka. Taka is sent by my brother, and my brother is not very necessary to mention, and the person does not want to mention his name. This is not necessary, this is not important. The important is financial help that is already achieved, okay, that is going to be achieved. So, when the agent is not important, and agent, again I mentioned that agent, who is agent? Agent is really the real actor, the real performer of the action, the real person or identity whom we want to focus, the person by whom the action is done. Here the verb send is sending, we see here is sending, and the real subject or real agent is my brother, and my brother is not important here, so he is not mentioned here. Okay, dear students, next, when the agent has already been mentioned, that is, everybody knows the agent. When the agent has already been mentioned, previously the name of the agent has been mentioned or focused, and this is known to everyone, or especially the person whom he is or she is speaking. In the next session of Parliament, new laws will be introduced aimed at stopping domestic violence. This is a sentence you see, who make the law or who introduce the law. Actually, the government in every country introduce new law. So, everybody knows this. In the sentence, we see new laws as subject. In the next session of Parliament, new laws will be introduced aimed at stopping domestic violence. So, we don't get by whom the law will be introduced. By the government, the new law will be introduced, and it is mentioned and it is known to everyone. That is why the government is not mentioned, and instead of using such structure, in the next session of Parliament, the government will introduce new laws aimed at stopping domestic violence. So, here we find the clear idea, but the previous one is better. Now, another thing, when people in general are agents, people in general, that is, every people is related to this, and every people does this or knows this. Okay, such in such situations we also use passive voice. An honest man is respected everywhere. An honest man, you see, an honest man is respected everywhere. Who respects? Every person respects. So every person is agent here. That is why it is written here, people in general are agents. So every person respects. Respects whom? An honest man. So this is quite unnecessary to mention the agent. Everybody respects an honest man everywhere. This is not so much good as the previous one. An honest man is respected everywhere. Or we could say people respect an honest man everywhere. Instead of the last two sentences, we should use in this case the first one. Okay, thereafter, see, when we want any variety in any writing, sometimes we are bored with some structure or with the same type of writing, and if there is any change, we feel better, and in that case this may be good to use different structure. You see the para and notice the sentences. Mr. Nahid does everything of his family. Mr. Nahid does everything of his family. In active voice, you see the verb does. Then the next sentence, he earns money for livelihood. He earns money. This is also active voice. He often goes to the bazaar to buy necessary things. Again, there is active voice. He often goes to the bazaar to buy necessary things. Thereafter, the next sentence, he manages his laborers. He manages his laborers. In this way, the same subject is doing some activities, and this seems to be the list of doing something or list of some actions, and the reader may grow impatient. That is why if there is any change, he or she may feel better. The next sentence we see, but his household matters are maintained by his wife Shara Nahid. So there is a contrast with but his household matters are maintained by his Shara Nahid. Here the speaker could say Shara Nahid, but Shara Nahid maintains his household matters. If it were done, it would be boring, and in order to relieve the reader from this boredom, the speaker has used a contrast, and not only the contrasting sentence but also contrasting voice. But his household matters are maintained by his wife Shara Nahid. Again, when we need natural flow and coherence, sometimes because of natural flow of writing or flow of thinking, and in order to maintain the coherence with words or sentences or expressions, we need to use passive voice, and passive voice comes as a must as a natural flow or coherence. Okay, dear students, notice this para. Mr. Kamal rises early in the morning. After prayer, he goes out for a morning walk. Is it visible to you? No. Mr. Kamal rises early in the morning. After prayer, he goes out for a morning walk. When he returns home, he finds that his breakfast has been prepared by his wife. Now you can see on the screen, you see the first sentence, Mr. Kamal rises early in the morning. This is active voice. This is just his activities in the morning. After prayer, he goes out for a morning walk. This is his next action. Thereafter, he returns home. When he returns home, he finds that, what does he find? He finds that his breakfast. So, that his breakfast comes as the object of the verb find. He finds what? He finds that his breakfast has been prepared. So, firstly the word comes, the word which comes is his breakfast, his breakfast. So, when the breakfast has been mentioned, thereafter the sentence, the last part of the sentence with his breakfast must be in passive voice, because his breakfast has become the subject of the next part, has been prepared by his wife. So, when he returns home, he finds that his breakfast. So, whenever he has mentioned the phrase his breakfast, he has no alternative to using passive voice here. He cannot say his breakfast has prepared, because it will be active and meaningless. His breakfast has prepared, this has no meaning. That is why it must be in passive voice. His breakfast has been prepared by his wife. In this way, to maintain natural flow or natural coherence, we sometimes use passive voice. And sometimes we want to show our interest on someone or somebody, that is the center of our interest, and to whom we find interest is subject or is the agent. Again, see the same thing, my father built this house. Another is the house was built by my father. So, in the first sentence, my father built this house. In this sentence, my father is the important, we have interest in my father firstly. Secondly, the house was built by my father. The focus of interest is the house. So, when we want to talk about the house, actually, we don't bring our father first, then we bring the house first. That is why the house was built by my father is the right use or proper use when we want to focus on the house. Next, the accident killed 20 people, or 20 people were killed by the accident. So, which is the center of our concentration or interest, to whom or to which we find interest, the accident or people, whom? Actually, we want to know about people. When we want to know about people, we will start with 20 people are killed by the accident, and the accident killed 20 people. Here interest is on the accident. So, according to our interest, our subjects or our agents are fixed. Dear students, we should not use always passive voice, especially in present perfect continuous, not present perfect. Actually, this is present perfect continuous tense. In present perfect continuous tense, you see the factory has been being built for 10 years. Grammatically, this is correct, but this is just so much chaotic use, and this is not very good sentence. So, in this case, in present perfect continuous tense, we should not use passive voice. We should avoid using passive voice in this sentence. The canal has been being dug for 6 months by the laborers. This is not good. Rather, the laborers have been digging the canal for 6 months. This is better. Okay. In intransitive verbs, you know, there is no use of passive voice in case of intransitive verbs, because there are physical action, and we cannot use passive voice in intransitive verbs. A man may die from hunger. We cannot make it passive. So, in case of intransitive verbs, they are always active. He disappeared in the marketplace. There is no object. So, where there is no object, there cannot be any passive voice. There is only one way, that is to use active voice. And next, you should remember, passive voice is often used in formal texts. Using active voice will make your writing clearer and easier to read. So, firstly I showed you a notice, and in the notice you have observed how passive voice is used by our dear principal, respected principal, and on, now again this is stated here, passive voice is often used in formal text, and using active voice will make your writing clearer and easier to read. But we should not always use passive voice. We should not say a cow is had by me. This is nothing. This is not a sentence. This is grammatically, this may be given the right that okay, a cow is had by me. This sentence was most discussed in our childhood days. In our especially high school days, we discussed this, and later on we found that we should not make every sentence passive voice, because passive voice is not always necessary and passive voice is not always good. Notice the sentences. Firstly, passive voice. The first sentence is, a great deal of meaning is conveyed by a few well chosen words. A great deal of meaning is conveyed by a few well chosen words. So, what is the active form? At the right side you see, a few well chosen words convey a great deal of meaning. This is better. This active voice is better than the passive one. A few well chosen, here expression is direct, expression is clear. A few well chosen words convey a great deal of meaning. So, we should speak in such ways. Our environment is largely polluted by smoke and chemicals, and perhaps the speaker could stop here after polluted. Our environment is largely polluted. Now he has mentioned by whom or by which agent this is polluted, by smoke and chemicals. So, this is rather ambiguous sometimes. So, if the speaker says in a clear-cut voice mentioning the agent, smoke and chemicals largely pollute our environment, this is direct and this is clearer than the previous one. So, we should not always use passive voice. Passive voice should be used where it is necessary, and we are to know its uses, and that is why I have given you this information. So, dear students, remain safe and sound, remain good, and in the next class we will see again. Thank you so much.